everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Affair Diaries. How's your day going so far? I hope it's been great, but if not, don't stress. You're in the perfect spot to relax and dive into some juicy relationship stories. There's always something new and unexpected waiting around the corner here. Before we jump in, leave a comment and share something good from your day. Let's keep the good vibes going and start this story together.
This Reddit story comes from the r/NaSleep subreddit, where the OP's daughter is sleeping with their married neighbor. I told her she needs to move out of my house. It was late at night, about 3 in the morning, when I woke up feeling thirsty. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen to get some water, and looked out the window, as I usually do. But something caught my eye. I saw my daughter, who is 21 years old, quietly sneaking back into our house. She was coming from our neighbor's yard, and it wasn't just any neighbor. This neighbor, a man in his 30s, is married. His wife wasn't home that night, as I noticed her car was gone. I stood there, staring, trying to piece together what I had just witnessed. My heart sank. I waited for her to get back into the house, sneaking through the basement door, probably thinking no one would notice. I was in shock. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, was involved with a married man. I couldn't believe it. The next morning, I felt like I was in a daze. But I knew I had to confront her about what I had seen. I went down to her room, took a deep breath, and asked her directly, "What were you doing at the neighbor's house last night?" At first, she tried to deny it. She came up with weak excuses, saying she was just walking around or something ridiculous like that. But I kept pressing her, and eventually she broke down. She admitted that she'd been sleeping with him for a couple of months. Hearing those words made me so angry that I couldn't control myself. I started yelling at her, telling her that what she was doing was wrong. She was destroying someone's marriage, a marriage that had a family, a life. I couldn't understand how my own daughter could be involved in something like this. She knew the wife had even babysat for them. How could she betray someone like that? In my frustration, I told her that she needed to either tell the wife about the affair or move out of the house. I wasn't going to tolerate this under my roof. My daughter, clearly upset, argued that I was overreacting. She didn't see the gravity of the situation the way I did. Even my wife thought I was being too harsh, but I couldn't shake the disappointment I felt. I wasn't just angry at the neighbor. I was deeply disappointed in my daughter. She was better than this, or at least I thought she was. As the day went on, I started to second-guess myself. Was I being too hard on her? My emotions were all over the place, and I wasn't sure if I was handling things the right way. I tried to calm down and think through everything. My wife had been cheated on in the past, before she met me, and maybe that's why she was handling this better than I was. But I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Later that day, I sent my daughter a text message. I apologized for yelling and asked if she wanted to grab a drink that evening so we could talk things out. I realized I hadn't even asked her how she felt or why she got into this situation. Maybe there was more to the story. Maybe she was hurting in ways I didn't understand. We went out that night, and the conversation was tense at first. We talked about normal things like work and school, avoiding the elephant in the room. After a while, she suddenly asked me if I was proud of her. That question hit me hard. I told her that I was proud of her as a person, but I wasn't proud of the choices she had made. I explained why her actions upset me so much, but I also reassured her that nothing she could ever do would make me stop loving her. She started to open up more, explaining how the affair had started. It was nothing sinister or planned, but it was still wrong. She had been babysitting for the neighbors for about a year, and during that time, she had gotten to know the husband. One night, she ran into him at a bar when she was out with friends, and things escalated from there. At the same time, she had been going through a rough breakup, and maybe that made her more vulnerable. She didn't realize how bad things had gotten. I told her that, as an adult, she had to take responsibility for her actions. What she was doing wasn't just a mistake. It was something that could deeply hurt other people. And I didn't want her to continue living in my house if this was how she was going to behave. We also talked about telling the wife. My daughter was scared, and I could understand why. She didn't know how the husband would react, or how the wife would take the news. But I couldn't let this continue in secrecy. I offered to go with her to tell the wife, and we decided that we would do it together the next day, while the husband was at work. My daughter also told me that she had been thinking about moving out for a while now, even before all of this came to light. She felt awkward staying in the house now that everything was out in the open. As we talked more, She started to cry, realizing the full impact of what she had done. She hadn't fully understood the damage she was causing, not just to the neighbor's marriage, but to herself as well. She was the other woman, and that was a hard pill for her to swallow. I reminded her about her mom's past, how she had been cheated on, and how much pain that had caused her. My daughter began to understand the seriousness of her actions. We cried together, and it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. I love my daughter, but I couldn't ignore what she had done. The next day, we went to the neighbor's house to tell the wife. It was an incredibly tense moment. My daughter was shaking, and I could feel the weight of what we were about to do. We knocked on the door, and the wife answered, not suspecting a thing. I won't go into all the details of that conversation, but it was one of the most painful things I've ever had to witness. The wife was devastated, and it was clear that her world was falling apart right in front of us. Afterward, I helped my daughter pack up her things, and we moved her into my sister's place for a while. She needs time to process everything, and I need time to figure out where we go from here as a family. I told her that things might get worse before they get better, but we would get through this together. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I realize that this situation has tested me in ways I never imagined. My relationship with my daughter has changed, but I'm hopeful that we can rebuild it. Mistakes were made, and hearts were broken, but at the end of the day, she's still my daughter, and I'll always be her dad.
Hey, OP, take time to process your emotions and give your daughter space to reflect. Keep communication open, offering support without judgment. Make sure she understands the seriousness of her actions while reassuring her of your love. Encourage her to seek counseling to work through her feelings. Discuss boundaries and expectations if she stays with family or eventually returns home. Protect your marriage by staying aligned with your wife on how to handle this. Stay mindful of the neighbor's family, but keep your distance to avoid further conflict. Focus on healing, understanding, and rebuilding trust over time.
This Reddit story from r/Am I the Asshole features an OP who feels conflicted about being upset that their husband of 8 years has come out as gay, wants a divorce, and is attempting to take everything, including their kids.
I never imagined my life would come to this point. When I married my husband 8 years ago, I thought we had it all. A stable, loving relationship, 2 beautiful children, and a future filled with endless possibilities. I loved him with everything I had, and I believed he loved me too. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing ever felt insurmountable. We always managed to find our way back to each other. That's why, when he sat me down a few months ago to tell me that he was gay and wanted a divorce, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. His words echoed in my head, but they made no sense to me. How could the man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, suddenly say he wasn't who I thought he was? I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, and everything I thought I knew about my life crumbled. He explained that he had only recently come to terms with his sexuality, and as much as it hurt to hear, I tried to understand. I knew this was a monumental moment for him, and part of me wanted to support him through this realization. But the other part of me, the part that had been his wife for 8 years, was shattered. My heart broke into a million pieces, and I couldn't help but feel betrayed. I didn't understand why he couldn't have come to this realization sooner, before we built a life together, before we had children. I couldn't stop the pain that spread through me like wildfire. The days after his revelation were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I looked at our children, my chest tightened with fear and sadness. How could I explain this to them? How could I make sense of something that didn't make sense to me? I knew we needed to talk about the logistics of the divorce, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. He didn't just want to end our marriage. He wanted to take nearly everything with him. His reasoning was simple. He was the primary breadwinner, so he felt entitled to most of our assets, including the house. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We had built this life together. Sure, he made more money than I did, but I had contributed in so many other ways. I had put my career on hold to raise our children, to take care of our home, to be his partner in every sense of the word. And now he wanted to take it all away, leaving me with nothing but the pieces of my broken heart? What stung the most, though, was when he said he wanted full custody of our kids. Our kids. The 2 little humans I had carried in my body, nurtured, and cared for every single day since they were born. Yes, he was involved, he loved them and they loved him, but I had always been their primary caregiver. I was the one who kissed their scraped knees, read them bedtime stories and held them when they cried. And now he was trying to take them from me, using the fact that I'd struggled with anxiety and depression against me. I had worked so hard to manage my mental health, to be the best mother I could be despite the challenges. To hear him weaponize my struggles, to suggest that I wasn't fit to care for our children because of them, was like a knife to the heart. I felt like he was punishing me for something I had no control over, for something that wasn't even relevant to how much I loved and cared for our kids. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could he be so selfish? I understood that he was going through something huge, that coming to terms with his sexuality was a life-altering realization. But why did his truth have to come at the expense of mine? Why did he get to walk away with everything, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life that no longer existed? I tried talking to him, tried to make him see how unfair he was being, but he insisted that he was being reasonable. He said he just wanted what was best for him and the kids, that I was being emotional and unreasonable for not seeing things his way. Emotional? Of course I was emotional. My entire world was falling apart, and he was the one pulling the strings. It wasn't just the divorce that hurt. It was the way he seemed to be erasing our life together, as if it had never mattered. He spoke about the future like I was just a footnote in his story, like our marriage was just a stepping stone to the life he really wanted. I couldn't help but feel discarded, like I had been used up and cast aside now that he was ready to move on. I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything, and she helped me realize that my feelings were valid. I wasn't crazy for being upset, for feeling hurt and betrayed. It wasn't just about him being gay, it was about the way he was handling everything, the way he seemed to be prioritizing his own happiness at the expense of mine and our children's. I knew I had to fight back. I wasn't going to let him take everything, and I certainly wasn't going to let him take our children away from me. I started talking to lawyers, gathering information about my rights, and preparing myself for the battle that was coming. It wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted to be in this position, but I didn't have a choice. I had to protect myself and my kids. As the weeks went on, things between us became more strained. Every conversation felt like a negotiation. Every interaction tinged with bitterness and resentment. I hated that it had come to this. I hated that the man I once loved was now someone I barely recognized. I had always believed that we would be able to work through anything, that no matter what happened, we would be able to find a way to co-parent peacefully. But the way he was acting made that seem impossible. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was being too emotional, too stubborn. But then I would think about our kids, about what they deserved, and I knew I had to keep fighting. They deserved to have both of their parents in their lives, and they deserved a mother who wasn't broken by the weight of an unfair divorce settlement. I'm still in the thick of it now. Nothing has been finalized, and I have no idea what the future holds. Some days I wake up feeling strong, ready to take on whatever comes next. Other days, the weight of it all feels unbearable, and I wonder how I'm going to get through this. But I know one thing for sure. I'm not giving up. Not on my kids, not on myself. I've learned a lot about myself through this process. I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew, that I can handle more than I ever thought possible. I've also learned that it's okay to be angry, to feel betrayed, and to stand up for myself when I'm being treated unfairly. I don't know what the future looks like, but I do know that I'll keep fighting for what's right, for me, for my kids, and for the life we deserve. Even if it means standing up to the person I once loved the most.
Relevant comments from Reddit users. Don't hesitate to fight dirty. Being nice won't help. I took the high road in my divorce and regret it because my ex used the legal system to continue abusing me. Comment. NTA. OP. This is the best advice you'll receive. Hire a lawyer who can play hardball. The goal isn't to be unreasonable, but since your husband is fighting dirty, you need someone ready to go toe-to-toe with him and his attorney for the marital assets and custody you deserve. Remember, in divorce, don't take advice from your enemy. It's tough, but you need to view this divorce through that lens as you work toward an amicable relationship afterward. Also, he's gaslighting you about what he deserves. Learn to recognize the manipulation. And don't forget to get STD/STI screenings. He didn't just discover he's gay without some research. I'm sorry. Comment. His lawyer likely advised him to pursue as much as possible. He may have been planning this for months, working with a lawyer to get what he wants. If you live in an alimony state, that's where you can hit him hardest. Be prepared for him to try to portray you as a terrible mother in court. He may lie, misuse text messages, and engage in other nasty tactics. Document everything, limit communication to email and text, keep receipts for expenses related to the kids, and maintain logs of your daily routine to demonstrate you're a fit mother. I'm sorry you're going through this.
This Reddit story is from r/family issues, where OP's mom continues to overlook her stepdad's red flags. I'm a 13-year-old girl, and my mom, who's 45, married my stepdad about 7.5 years ago. At first, things seemed fine, but everything changed last year. I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know if they were truly red flags or if I was just overreacting. My stepdad likes to joke around a lot. Sometimes, he tells me things like, "Go to bed," or "Go play in traffic," in a playful tone. I never thought much of it until one day, during an argument, things felt different. We were arguing about me not paying rent, which made no sense since I'm only 13. I don't fully remember the details, but it escalated, and my mom told me to go upstairs. As I was heading up, I overheard him telling my mom that she should be taking his side, not mine. My mom, confused, said she didn't know you weren't playing around, but he snapped, "Yes, she did." His tone was harsh, and it cut deep. I tried to hold back my tears, but I felt completely blindsided. Another time, I had a friend over, let's call her G. We were being silly and decided to make fake cigarettes using tea bags. It was a dumb idea, and we didn't even inhale them, we were just pretending. We usually did this on the roof when no one was home, but my mom was at work, and I didn't dare ask my stepdad for permission. So, we stupidly smoked them in my bedroom. Suddenly, my stepdad burst in, demanding to know what was burning. I panicked and tried to make up excuses, but he didn't believe me. He pressed his forehead against mine aggressively, talking right in my face. He pushed me to the other side of the room, and I started fake hyperventilating to buy some time. But honestly, I was actually scared and hyperventilating for real, just not as dramatically as I made it seem. He told me, "I'm going to count to 5, and if you don't show me where they are, I'm going to smack you." I never thought he'd actually hurt me because he always seemed so good with kids, but when he reached 5, he raised his arm and swung it at me. I barely moved out of the way in time. My friend, G, was sitting on the bed, crying. She wasn't scared for herself, she was terrified he was going to hit me. Afterward, he smiled as he walked out with the cigarettes, saying, "You're going to be in big trouble." We sat on my bed, crying. G was so shaken up that she hasn't come back for a sleepover since. My mom didn't even address the fact that he had almost hit me. She just brushed it off, saying, "Well, he was raised by boys, and men are hard on boys." Another incident happened when my other friend, W, was over. My stepdad had asked me to clean the floor before he got home. So, I started cleaning my room, thinking that's what he meant. When he got back, he said, "No, the living room looks exactly the same as it did when I left." But he had never mentioned the living room. I was confused, but I gave him my phone like he asked. My friend and I told my mom what had happened, and she talked to him about it while we stayed in my room. Later that night, I overheard them arguing. My mom said, "She didn't understand what you said." But he just yelled back, "She's still irresponsible." I didn't catch the rest of their conversation, but I cried myself to sleep until my mom returned my phone at 1 a.m. In our new house, which we moved into when I was around 10 or 11, my bedroom door didn't close properly because the doorknob was broken. One day, my stepdad removed the lock from the inside of my door because I hadn't cleaned my room. I get that he wanted me to clean, but there were other things he could have taken away, my phone, my TV, or my computer, not my privacy. I cleaned my room, and multiple times he promised to put the lock back on, but it's been a year, and I still have to put a chair in front of the door to keep it closed. Just an hour ago, something else happened that really upset me. My dog, Thor, sometimes has accidents inside the house. He's done this on my mom and stepdad's bed a few times, so they lock their bedroom door to keep him out. My mom was at work, and my sister was out with her friend. I woke up, and Thor was excited to see me, so I took him to my room. I didn't notice the door to my stepdad's room was open, and Thor jumped on the bed. A few minutes later, my stepdad stormed in with a belt in his hand. He called Thor's name, and Thor jumped off the bed, but my stepdad hit him with the belt. It was a hard hit. He's lightly hit Thor with the belt before while playing, but this was different. This was out of anger. I just sat there, staring at the door, feeling helpless. What hurts the most is that he never apologizes for anything, not for the things he says, not for almost hitting me, and not for hurting Thor. I've got more stories like this, but I'm not sure anyone would want to read them. I just don't know if I'm overreacting or if my stepdad really is as bad as I think he is.
Advice to Op. It sounds like you're going through a really tough time with your stepdad, and it's important to acknowledge that your feelings are valid. Some of the things you've described, like his aggressive behavior and the way he speaks to you, are concerning and not okay, especially if they make you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. It might help to talk to your mom again, but this time, try to explain clearly how his actions are making you feel. If that doesn't change anything, or if you don't feel comfortable talking to her, consider reaching out to a trusted adult, like a teacher, counselor, or another family member. Having someone outside of your home to talk to can offer a different perspective and give you more support. It's also important to take care of yourself emotionally and mentally during this time. Surround yourself with friends who care about you. And remember that you deserve to feel safe and respected in your own home.